everybody, and welcome to the Supercars Exchange podcast. As always, I am joined by Shane. How you keeping, Shane?
Good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm going pretty well. Pretty excited for this one. It's been a pretty controversial weekend, to say the least.
Oh, the screaming parody.
Yeah.
Parody, parody, parody. That was the big buzzword earlier on in the weekend.
until we had on track overtakes of the safety car.
Yeah,
it seems
that's
like
it.
Bathurst a few
It
years
was
ago all over
probably
again.
probably the best overtake for the weekend. I think.
Yeah, it's I saw just before we jump into it, I saw an edit that someone did where they had the Bunnings Trade Power Pass Power Play, and they had the footage of Whincup going around the Mustang safety
Oh,
car. So
oh wow, yeah.
it was
It
pretty
was
good. It's pretty
it
good.
was yeah. That's it. Well, the same with the slightly edited photos of McLaughlin going sideways with the AUK part of the Auckland sign
Oh
down
yes.
the side of the Mustang. So I had originally put up a post on one of the Facebook pages saying, like just left it with the V, and just spelled that out as to how good your weekend is basically with that. But yeah, I thought it was still very good. It was definitely good car control on that side of
Yes.
it. But we'll get to that bit a little bit later anyway.
So obviously the first race of the weekend, the Red Bulls would 1-2 from the initial results anyway, until we got some very controversial penalties. But first of all, we'll just talk about Red Bull having a comeback now in the first race of the weekend, which was interesting to see. Whether a bit difficult to pin it on whether it was from the aero changes or whether Red Bull are legitimately actually having a comeback or not.
Yeah, well, definitely the that night the comment sections in many Facebook groups they've just melted with the parody comments. Obviously, like short answer would be, have they gone too far back the other way? Quick answer would be, well, maybe they have, but at the same time, like Tickford was very fast all weekend. Like up until qualifying, they had been the benchmark team all weekend. Some were saying that maybe Triple Eight were sandbagging a little bit. I'm not too sure about that, but I think the biggest surprise was that DJR weren't as fast as we expected them to be, particularly early in the weekend. We've seen McLaughlin; he had a few dramas, lost a lot of practice time back on Friday, so Friday was pretty much a write-off for them. So you lose a lot of that important setup time. So I guess that's why they were on the back foot, but they did make the best of a bad situation through the race.
It was interesting to see that they weren't even like the fastest Mustang. The Tickford, as you were saying, had a pretty decent start to the weekend as well. It was a good performance as well by a couple of the Nissan drivers as well. Andre Heimgartner, as he always has been throughout this season, was the best performer for the weekend, making up 8 positions in the Saturday race, and that wasn't due to any penalties from anyone in front of him. So that was all on-track overtakes, which I thought was pretty impressive from him.
Yeah, you're right. He he was just solid for much of the weekend. I think he was one of the guys that was hurt a little bit more by the safety car on the Sunday as well, but I think he was just solid for that race on Saturday. So they're certainly able to still wrangle enough pace out of that Nissan to get it into positions it may not always deserve, but also it's his home circuit as well, so that's obviously a lift for a lot of the Kiwi drivers, and obviously it's a track they're very familiar with. I think any young Kiwi drivers probably done thousands of laps around that circuit by the time they even moved to Australia. So
Yeah.
it was a solid result for him.
Moving on to the bit of a controversial part from the Saturday anyway. Jamie Whincup getting the 15-second post-race penalty, and for spinning Percat on the first or second lap? Second lap. Yeah. But then that penalty didn't even drop him behind Nick Percat, who ended up 12th, Whincup ending up 6th. So, it didn't even benefit Percat in the end. It just was punishing Whincup rather than benefiting him. And I think if it was applied during the race, if it was a drive-through penalty, it would have obviously benefited Percat then, because he would have made up that one position from Whincup doing the drive-through because they have to serve it within 3 laps. But the post-race penalty, the stewards or the officials were saying, was because they're saying that there was a possibility that Scott Pye was also involved. I didn't actually see where Scott Pye was relative to the accident, but it's interesting because that's only one extra car, so there wasn't even that much going on during the race, so it's a bit interesting that they didn't even do that during the race.
Yeah, it does. It was an interesting one because we seen, Pukekohe suddenly got spun around. I didn't see initially who would hit him. I didn't realise it was Whincup earlier on, but when they showed that first onboard shot, you thought, well, it's a bit of a slam dunk penalty. He's just driven straight into him. Like there was no movement. Like normally, if you get a tap from the rear, you just see that little bit of a wiggle from the camera. Even when it's facing forward, you'll still see the car's being hit a little bit. Even when it's only light. So I thought it was a little bit strange. Like if he had been given a 15-second penalty, like they didn't go through it then, and that's what I thought was surprising on race control's behalf, was that they didn't look at it there. I know they didn't have all the evidence that they were saying, and like one bit that I found frustrating was that they said that they don't have all of the same access to the equipment and the data and telemetry and all of that sort of stuff that they would normally have back in Australia. So that raises the question of why the hell not? Like if it's a logistics thing, they've got to get that figured out. If it's a cost thing, well, bugger the cost, because you need to get these things sorted out better than what it had been. So to wait until the end of a 70-lap race when that was lap 2, I don't think was that good, because I think Whincup, looking at it I thought once they started showing replays, I thought it was fairly easy to say that, yep, that's a slam dunk penalty. That should be 15 seconds that he'd have to serve at his first pit stop, which would have dropped him back to the end of the field. And then if he had have come through and finished, 12th or 10th or something like that, well, then that's good for him. But I think he needed to serve that penalty earlier than the end of the race, because he only dropped from, second down to six. So that's barely, you lose a few points, but and you'll obviously lose a trophy out of it. But overall, it's not that big a hit compared to what it should have been for something that happened way back on the second lap of the race.
It's interesting. There was the the pretend presentation, I guess you could say, on the Sunday morning where a representative of Red Bull got up there because Shane Van Gisbergen wasn't at the circuit yet. I thought that was just funny, just to see someone else up there collecting the trophy again, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I didn't even see any of that, so I didn't realise that they did that. I'm surprised they even went as far as trying to hold another podium. Normally they just swap it in the garages and leave it at that. I don't think. I suppose the sponsors want to get a photo of who rightfully is meant to be there. Like, especially for Reynolds, if he was up there, then he wants to get his photos with the trophy as well. So, but it was a good. Overall, I thought Waters, he drove really good. He put Van Gisbergen under a lot of pressure in those first 2 or 3 laps, but then Van Gisbergen was able to slowly get more of a gap back to Waters, and ultimately had to settle for what became second, but was going to be third. But interesting. Well, you can understand why there was such a blow up about the speed of the Triple Eight cars, because we've seen that Whincup didn't have the best qualifying. I think he was even just outside the top 10 for qualifying, perhaps. But he charged through to second, and at one stage, even threatened to take the lead off Van Gisbergen after that the second round of pit stops, and it was like, well, that you think you got to have a bloody fast car for that to happen. But I don't think it was that bad. Again, I think Tickford had steadily been getting better over the past couple of rounds. We're keeping them very honest all weekend. I think it was just that DJR were having more of an off weekend that I think exaggerated any gains that they may have had. But it's definitely, there's no doubt about it that Triple Eight have made a lot of gains with this latest round of aero changes.
It's also interesting because we're talking beforehand before we started recording about how a lot of the overtakes weren't actually on track due to the amount of aero that they now have, and because a lot of the passes made at Pukekohe are just sitting in behind and kind of pulling out at the end of the straight, but you just can't get in that slipstream due to the dirty air. So a lot of the making up the ground was due to the pit stops as well. So the strategy really came into play during this race for sure.
Yeah, it's a problem that we started to see a lot in Formula One, where a lot of the changes in position throughout the course of a race was done during pit stops. We did see the odd pass down the back straight, but it wasn't too many. And again, it was usually when there was a fair difference in tyre life. And like we'll touch on it in race for the second race for the weekend too. Like we had Percat who had tyres 14 laps newer and couldn't pass Mostert on the back straight when he should have easily had enough traction to help get him alongside, and an aero slipstream would have definitely sealed the position for him. Maybe the Tickford cars may or may not have a little bit of a horsepower advantage, but he just wasn't able to close the gap enough to have a genuine overtaking opportunity. But most of the overtakes we've seen throughout the weekend were done at the hairpin, which is what we were saying in the preview. It's not a very long run down there, but if you get a good run coming out of that left-hander and that back chicane, you've only sort of just got to get up enough along the side and you can just have a lunge and get down the inside. Most were able to get it done. Whincup didn't. He certainly wasn't the first to turn a car around there.
It's in along that back straight though. Obviously, they've got that new chicane from 2013. So really, if you're putting that pressure on coming into that little section there, usually you can pressure them into making a bit of a mistake through there, and that's enough.
Well, the Tickford guys did anyway.
Yeah, it's enough to be able to get alongside them coming into the hairpin. So it makes it. I think that little bit of chicane makes it interesting, and it certainly helps us nowadays when with all this aero, it really helps with passing for sure.
Yeah, I think maybe because it's not quite 90 degrees. I think even if they went a little bit over 90 degrees, so it just sort of folded back on itself a little bit, like maybe like a 105 degree sort of corner, make it a little bit more of a hairpin. You got to just get a little bit more speed off, and you can't afford to run wide at all. Otherwise, you got to hit the grass, and then it's going to make the exit of the left-hander coming out, like, because again, it would be a sharper corner too. Traction's going to be a lot more vital there, so I think you would make have two much more genuine overtaking opportunities. It should be anyway, but at the moment with the aero, you sort of don't. But going back to the Tickford thing, how stupid was that? They'll both, what would have ended up being second and third for the race ended up being Waters still finishing second, and then Mostert finishing way down the order.
Yeah.
And now ultimately losing second in the championship now too because of it.
Yeah, it's just a stupid. Just teammates should not be doing that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Even though, Waters and Mostert aren't technically teammates, but obviously run out of the same garage kind of thing. So, yeah, just really stupid.
I thought, like, mainly because I enjoyed watching them battle because it's not the first time that they've done it, and it's not the first time that they've come together either. They came together famously at Bathurst last year, and I think that hurt Waters more than it did Mostert at the time. And I think they even joked they were at I forget where, I think it's in Queenstown. That's the downhill sort of bobsled type thing and they were giving each other a hard time about coming together on that. And then they come together during the race, so they called it. They were destined to stuff up somewhere on the weekends by the sounds of it. So it was you want to see teammates going for it, and obviously at that stage it was going to be for the third step on the podium. But ultimately, if they both had have just been patient, they would have both been there. But no one knew at that stage whether or not Whincup was going to get the penalty. I think even then it was announced that they were going to investigate it, but we were still, I think even during the telecast, it wasn't known if he really was or not. The commentators didn't seem to say one way or another whether or not they thought it was a podium. They were split down the middle a little bit, but it was a bit of a horror weekend for Whincup, all in all, I think.
That's for sure. And moving on to more horror for Whincup, the Sunday race, obviously highlighted by that overtake on the safety car, but bounce back for DJR Team Penske, putting the controversy aside for a second. Well, for Scott McLaughlin anyway, not so much Fabian Coulthard. He had a bit of a shocker, unfortunately, but Scott McLaughlin was able to didn't qualify great, but obviously because of the safety car thing, he was able to with the grid reshuffle, he was able to come up the field a little bit more and was able to grab the win.
Yeah, he did. His pace definitely was a lot faster on Sunday. You could see that once they took the lead after the safety car, that he seemed to have the measure of Van Gisbergen, was just slowly pulling away at like that couple of tenths of a second. So, again, I think that answered the parity debate as to whether or not Triple Eight now have an advantage. I think it's actually very even now between at least those two teams, and I think Tickford are right on their heels. And if we see Penrite might be able to, they had a better weekend, I guess, in some ways. Obviously, Reynolds had issues on Sunday as well, but they were a little bit faster, I think, all in all. But so I think they've got it just about right now. I don't think there's any more changes that need to be done straight away. But I think, McLaughlin definitely had better pace on Sunday. He was slowly eking out a bit of a gap. Late in the race, the commentators were getting excited that the gap was coming down, but when they would switch back to having a look at that battle between McLaughlin and Van Gisbergen, you'd see that McLaughlin was being held up by a back marker, and once he got past it, then he would be able to pull that gap back out by another couple of tenths on the next lap. So I think it was just being a little bit cautious on McLaughlin's side. No doubt he would have been calling for blue flags for the back marker to get out of the way, but it's just one of those things. Again, he would have been in the aero wash from the like turbulent air on the back straight, which is going to slow you down a little bit as well. So especially going down towards the first chicane through turn 4, 5, 6, where they 3, 4, 5, where they done the new service change, it would have been hurting a little bit through there too. So it wasn't a big surprise that he was losing a bit of time being held up by back markers anyway.
Yeah, it was also I think just like he knew that he had the pace over Van Gisbergen, so he wasn't about to try and push wildly past back markers, like you were saying, just a bit on the side of caution. But the Chaz Mostert and Percat battle, like we touched on just before, Percat closed pretty rapidly on Mostert, I would say, with those newer tyres, but then just wasn't able to make the pass. And it was frustrating because we were a bit teased with that, because I didn't watch it live, I watched it after the fact, but I was watching it close up, and I'm just like, he just can't get past at all. He closed up so quickly, and then all of a sudden just died completely. So it was really annoying, I guess, trying to watching that battle unfold, but then just nothing happening at the end, kind of thing.
Yeah, it was definitely an exciting battle, probably the most exciting battle in supercars across the entire weekend, I think.
Yeah.
But, I think definitely Percat would have had to take a fair bit out of those tyres just trying to catch up to begin with. But like we said, when we got there, the tyres, he should have still had enough rubber left to be able to pass him. I think it was just that disadvantage you get from being in the turbulent air now that hurt them. I think, maybe if there was another, if it was the old circuit just straight down to the hairpin, he might have had just enough momentum to make that pass stick then. But I think even on the final couple of laps, he was basically pushing him through the hairpin anyway. So he definitely had more pace over him, just couldn't do enough about it. But he might have also been looking at a little bit of self-preservation too after a disappointing Saturday to be up in fourth on Sunday. Really good points for him. So the glory of a podium is obviously what he would have been wanting, and be disappointed to just miss it. But fourth is still a very solid result. So he'll still be happy with that, and the best result for their team for the weekend as well.
Yeah, it's pretty good to see Brad Jones Racing back up there again, especially after that fire in Townsville. I think that set them back a little bit. But towards the end there, when Percat was, I think it was the second to last lap, Percat really took a big dive at Mostert. You could just really tell that he still had the tyres there, but I think Mostert defended really well as well, considering that the amount of advantage that Percat had over him in the tyre department anyway.
Yeah, Mostert is an experienced campaigner, and he's worked out how to defend and where you only really like if you're looking in the mirrors going down the back straight, you see that they're just a couple of like 2 or 3 car lengths behind. They're not going to be able to make the dive there, and you just got to drive down the inside of towards the hairpin, and that's pretty much going to stop it, because we have seen it's not impossible to get the sort of switchback if you stay up wide of the racing line. You can cut back underneath, but then you are sort of on the wrong side going into the second last corner. So it's it can work, but I think you got to really get a great exit out of that hairpin for it to actually be stuck. But yeah, we had a few other good results over the course of the weekend too. Yeah, Hazelwood had a really solid result. I think that's his best result for the season. We had Di Silvestro finish well in the top 10, which was, I think, her best career result. Winterbottom made a better Sunday than what he did a Saturday, certainly. And I don't know how he ran out of fuel. I didn't actually see how that was explained, but I thought, how do you not go out without enough fuel in the race? And because there's supposed to be 3 or 4 different sort of warnings you're supposed to get beforehand that you need to come in and pit. And so you'd think even if they got into the pot, it would still probably be enough to get one more lap and then come in and pit. But that sort of things happens. But Stanaway, I think, was one of the big surprises all weekend. The couple of top 10s.
Yeah, it was
after giving him a hard time as we have for most of the season. He's actually had a really good weekend. So that's solid results for him, which will be certainly haven't come a moment too soon.
Yeah, it's just after Boost Mobile announced that they might not be there next season. He comes out with a good performance. I think the Sunday one for sure was probably due to the safety car reshuffle, but obviously the Saturday performance, good work to get up into 10th. Had a pretty decent qualifying as well on the Saturday, so it was good to see him actually step up and perform. It was listening to the commentary as they were talking about going through like the results towards like the end. They're talking about how like it's their season best results. Like, well, yeah, because we've had a random grid order reset halfway through the race.
Yeah, that's it. Halfway through the race, it basically became a reverse grid race.
Yeah, that's it.
But in fairness, though, look, we've seen in other races where he's been running in okay position, just drop back. So you still, you can only race what's in front of you. So that's still a really good result. So you can't take that away from him, even though others were hurt badly by it. But he could have easily gone and had his own accident at some stage during the race, which we've seen in the past as well. So I think a 10th on the Saturday and the 9th on the Sunday, I think is a solid result for them. And again, not a moment too soon for GRM, who, as you just mentioned, may be looking for a new title sponsor next year, and which adds to the evidence that Boost Mobile might be about to start their own team next season. So I guess it'll be watch this space.
So moving on to, I'd say probably the most controversial part of the weekend.
I'll go for the whole year.
Unless something really massive happens at Bathurst, then it's the most.
Yeah, certainly year to date, and it may go down as the biggest stuff up for the year, really.
It's I've been F1. This is a bit related, but F1 has been doing stuff about like most controversial F1 instances. I think like the first time they ever had a safety car, they didn't know who the leader was, so they couldn't actually pick up the leader, and everyone was so confused. And I'm like, that reminds me of this weekend.
Yeah, that's it.
So obviously everyone saw it, and all of the teams had kind of a different view on it. Some people were confused whether McLaughlin was the leader or whether Whincup was supposed to be the leader or what. But I think Whincup was the leader at the time, and those orange lights on the safety car means you're supposed to stay behind that safety car. Like, regardless of whether you're the leader or not, and whether you think you're the leader or the safety car driver thinks you're the leader or whatever, if those orange lights are on, you're not supposed to be going past it anyway. Because that could mean that there's, like Roland Dane was saying, there could have been an incident up further on the track that you need to be going really slow for, so they weren't going to wave you past at that point. So, for all Jamie knew, there could have been a car rolled over further down the accident, and he's just blasted straight around the safety car, and is doing like whatever 150 200 k's an hour down the back straight, and he's just going to run straight into officials who are out on the circuit or something, because he doesn't know what the accident is technically. So he should have really just been staying behind that safety car, and then if he's thinking, oh, I'm not the leader, then radioed in, and then they could have radioed it, transferred that to race control instead of saying that, oh, I know better than the safety car driver, I'm just going to go straight around him, kind of thing.
Yeah, like rules is rules is rules. Like he has stuffed up rule, and it's not the first time it's happened. And you think after the one that effectively cost him a Bathurst, or at least a chance at a Bathurst, you'd think that you wouldn't go close. You'd just be, all right, I'll wait here. I think they've made a mistake, but they'll fix it, and they would have. And I think had he not gone past, they actually had the effective leader of the race anyway, because McLaughlin and Van Gisbergen would have pitted. They no doubt would have filled it right up like what we seen back on the Saturday race, where all those that pitted behind the safety car pretty much brimmed the tank.
Yeah.
So they would have dropped back a fair way anyway. And as we've seen that Whincup, he had good pace throughout the weekend. So I think he would have been able to skip away from the pack, as he was starting to already do before he got his penalty anyway. But I think after he's passed it, it made the problem worse.
Yeah.
Because they've then waved the other guys through, but they've come around for some reason. Holdsworth was showing up 11th. It's totally ruined his afternoon. The safety cars just dropped back to Whincup for whatever reason, because he's cycled back around and effectively started lapping most of the field. So I think the safety car, if it has made the mistake, because I actually thought that McLaughlin and Van Gisbergen had pitted that same lap that the safety car had come out, so it may not have actually had the opportunity to pick them up anyway. It may have just, as they called it, it's come out right behind them, so it may not have been able to be in front of them anyway. I don't know, without seeing what the track GPS and seeing where the cars were at the exact time the safety car come out. I don't know, I'm just speculating, but regardless of what happened there, Whincup should never have passed the safety car. He deserves the drive-through penalty straight away for it anyway, and so it ruined his Sunday as well as having his Saturday ruined. Then he went on the front foot and started berating the race officials after the race, and he questioned their integrities, accusing them of going out and getting on the red wines, not taking it seriously enough, that the teams are professional, the drivers they're putting everything on the line to try and win championships and win races and everything like that, and then race control aren't taking it seriously. He deserves a massive fine over that. That to me is acting very childish. I don't like the fact that he says that. That sums up everything that people don't like about Jamie Whincup. I know everyone knows he's an incredible driver, but he's got a lot of haters out there, and the Winch Cup tag that he gets is because of stuff like that.
Yeah.
He needed to just cop it on the chin and go, yeah, I stuffed up. Yeah, yes, race control probably didn't get it quite right either, but everybody's human, so they're probably not going to get it right every time, even though you expect it. But the rule was there for Jamie to stick to. He didn't. He went around it, then he berated them. And the fact that he's questioned their integrity, I think, is just shocking. I can't believe that he's actually gone that far as to say it. So I think he deserves a pretty solid 5-figure fine for that, because in rugby league, if you were to question the referee's integrity or anything like that, you're walking away with a 10 grand fine. We see coaches cop that all the time for berating the referees about their performance during a game, and straight away it's a 10 grand fine. So I think Whincup needs something very similar straight up. I don't think you can allow a driver to get away with that. If you do, you're just starting a precedent.
Exactly. It's obviously, when Whincup came up to the back of that safety car, it was the beginning of the safety car period, as you would call it, and there was cars coming in and out of the pit lane and everything. So it's a big mess at that point anyway. So if he had stayed behind it and he'd say, "Oh, I don't think this is right," and then obviously the team can contact race control about that. Then race control can go, yeah, we might not have got this right, and then they could have rearranged it within the next few laps, rather than taking it into your own hands, not even telling your team what you're doing, and then just going straight around. And also, like, my second point about this is, like, he's questioning the level that the Cam's race controller is operating at, right? But Tim Shanken, who's the race director, has been doing this for years, and they hold a really high standard for supercars. And Michael Masi, who was Tim Shanken's right hand man for race control up until until he moved on to F1 after Charlie Whiting has passed. So that just shows that CAMS holds a really high stand, because F1 has a selection of the whole world, yet they chose Michael Masi, who was the second in charge to Tim Shanken. So you know that they're holding a pretty high standard anyway.
Yeah, and that's it. And there's no reason why. And for all we know, they may have offered Tim Shanken the gig. He may have just chosen to not do it because he's certainly getting on a little bit in years. He may choose, doesn't want to travel the world and spend time around the F1 circus. He'd probably rather spend it at home with family. But yeah, you're right. Like I said, you're questioning their professionalism, their integrity as to how how they're making these calls. And one, they're not the drivers, so even if they did go out and have a glass of wine with dinner that night, well, that's not the driver's issue. The second that they walk into that race control office, they're going to do the best job that they can, because they understand that, like Whincup said, there's race wins at stake, there's championships at stake. They don't want to ruin it, because again, they know that there's hundreds of thousands of people watching the sport from home that don't want to see a fast like that. And I think that it was already going to be a stuff up, because they may have sent the safety car out a few seconds too late, or whichever it may have been. It could have even been, they may have sensed it out. Maybe the safety car just didn't get going as quickly as it should have. Who knows? Until they do that investigation, which is probably right that they do it. But I think Whincup has definitely compounded the situation by taking the rules into his own hands and going around it. It's a violation of track safety. So again, you can argue that there's meant to be another fine for that as well. Whilst all that confusion was going on, they spoke to Roland Dane. As much as I love to bag out Roland Dane, but he spoke brilliantly, I thought. He summed up the situation fantastic. They spoke to Tim Edwards at Tickford, who was hurt the worst out of it. Like, they had three of their drivers impacted by it. Moss had said after the race, after he was up on the podium, that he's holding Lee Holdsworth's trophy. That wasn't his to collect today, because he was ripped off for it, and he absolutely was. Like, Holdsworth had brilliant qualifying, was in a good chance of finishing on the podium for the race, and that may have slipped a little bit if there was an incident with the safety car. But again, the Whincup thing, I think, has made that a lot worse, and has hurt them badly. So I think both Tim Edwards and Roland Dane spoke really well on the subject. Neil Crompton went into the race control office after the race, and they explained it. He did sort of mention the fact that one of the drivers was upset. Didn't mention who. Tim Shanken was pretty quick to say that that's not the case, and didn't know who the driver was. But I think once they figure that out, I'm pretty sure Tim Shanken's going to be a little bit ropeable at Jamie Whincup for some time. So even Cam Waters came out so far. He went so far as to say today they should just ditch the race 24 results, just scrap it from the record books and just have it as a non-event. I don't think they can go that far, because it wasn't down to weather. that they just physically couldn't complete the laps. It was just a stuff up,
Yeah.
a big stuff up middly. But I think that you have to still declare that as a race. So it sucks, but those things happen, and but you see it all the time. There's some drivers that always have their race stuffed up by a safety car. You get drivers that have to double stack. Like, how many times did Craig Lowndes have to double stack behind Whincup? Like, he was the double stack king. He had to do it half a dozen times in the season, and took away any legit chance he had of having a genuine charge at the championship because he had so many races ruined by double stacking because of a safety car. So it happens, and So for Whincup, you're like, it may have disadvantaged him, and yes, he may not have won the race because of it, but that happens in motorsport. It's just bad timing. Like, go down to the Penrite garage and say you ruined our race and have a whinge at them for doing it, But don't you can't take it into your own hands like that. And it certainly melted the comment section on Facebook who were not afraid to give him a hard time. And like you said, it was someone brought it up as the Bunnings power play pass for the weekend. They used that footage as it, and it's like, so obviously the people are seeing the funny side of it. It wasn't exactly funny necessarily, but I guess if you can find a way to poke fun at it, then I guess it'll be all okay in the end.
It's gonna make some great memes, that's for sure, and I'm sure there's already some great memes.
Some would argue that why didn't he do it a race later at Bathurst, because he's good at finding ways to lose at Bathurst as well. So, but hey, he might double down and do it again there as well.
Yeah. I hope not, because Craig's going to be back for that one. So
yeah, that's it. Well, maybe Craig should have jumped in with Van Gies and might have a better shot. But they will have a seriously good lineup, though. I think they'd be the envy of most teams.
It's a bit difficult to pick your top three from this weekend, because they're obviously both very very different races. We had just for example, Di Silvestro came 16th on the Saturday, which is around about where she finishes anyway, and then ended up with a 7th on the Sunday. So it's a bit difficult to choose an all-round performer from the whole weekend. But for me, I'm probably going to go Stanaway with the 1 point, just because he's probably just about the only person that was actually relatively consistent throughout the weekend. I'll probably then go McLaughlin with the 2 points, just because he was able to bounce back. Well, they didn't have a terrible Saturday, but he was able to come back and take the win on the Sunday. And then for the 3 points, go Shane Van Gisbergen, because he was, despite the chaos that was surrounding him, he was able to get a first and a second place and take away the most amount of points from the weekend. So obviously most well performer, and I was just impressed that he was able to harness the pace and the aero changes, obviously, from for the Commodore, and able to get up there for both the days.
Yeah, we're very similar on that thinking. Yeah, so I'll go 3-2-1. So for 3 points, I've gone for Van Gisbergen, because it was quite a dominant winner back on the Saturday race. And then the Sunday, he didn't qualify the best. I think he was side by side with McLaughlin on the grid, but together they managed to chip away at it. They were obviously good fortune with the safety car incident, but they both drove really well and ended up finishing first and second on together there. But Van Gisbergen gets that, and winning the Jason Richards Trophy as well, being one of the hometown heroes. I think that's he looked quite emotional after winning it. That it's one of the trophies he really wants to win throughout the course of the year. So it was a solid result there to claim the Jason Richards Trophy. And then 2 points goes to McLaughlin, because he made the best of a bad weekend. He crossed the line 6th on Saturday, but was promoted to 4th after penalties to Davidson and to Whincup. So 4th there, not a bad result at all, I guess you could say there. But then Sunday with a little bit of luck going his way, managed to get the win. But he had much better pace on on Sunday anyway. Whether that was a definite improvement to the car or whether he was able to just drive it a little bit better, not too sure. Like, he was under the weather. He did have a bit of a cold or something like that earlier in the weekend. So not that it's any excuse. Most drivers will find themselves going into a weekend crook at some stage throughout the year anyway. So certainly not a first there. But I think, solid result there. But I've gone to 1 point. I've actually gone for Di Silvestro, mainly because of that one result, the 7th on the Sunday. Yes, there was a fair bit of good fortune that she was able to get an advantage out of the safety car, but again, you've still got to finish there as well. So I think that's a solid result, and be interesting to see what happens with her next year. If Kelly Racing do switch to Mustangs, if that means that she might be able to find a gig somewhere else, or if this may be her final year in supercars, we're yet to see. But I think it was a solid result for her. But again, across the weekend, you had Stanaway, like we touched on, then you gave him your 1 point. He drove really well. Scott Pye had a solid result on Sunday too. Again, there's good fortune in it, but Hazelwood, Percat, there was a few solid results on the Sunday that were helped out by the safety car. So a few drivers easily could have got that final point, but I decided to go with Di Silvestro.
I think it really just for trying to rate your kind of top performance for that weekend, you really just have to look at the results rather than the controversy surrounding them, just in order to actually be able to choose someone, really.
Yeah, well, like most weekends we go kind of straightforward. It's easy enough to figure out a 3-2-1. Sometimes they've been a little bit hard to work out exactly what you want to do as well. So it's not about to be any easier going into the Enduros. There's always a few ups and downs throughout the course of the Enduro season. So we're thinking about shuffling up exactly what we do for the points. We might add either a couple of extra points into what we dish out. If not, we might come up with a different structure for the 3 endurance races. So we'll we'll certainly keep everyone posted on what we decide to do there. But it certainly wasn't a straightforward weekend, and I guess for some it was a bit of a waste of time, I guess, travelling across the ditch to go race. But I think for most of the fans at home, it certainly was one of the most entertaining weekends we've had this year. Not necessarily for the on-track action. It was mostly the stuff that happened away from the wheel-to-wheel action that we normally see.
It's interesting because a lot of this stuff from this season, like a lot of the aero changes and stuff, and then this weekend have been, I don't know whether if it's just because we're currently experiencing it, or whether it actually is going to be quite controversial in years to come, because you always remember stuff that was controversial years ago, like Rick Kelly taking out Craig Lowndes' Phillip Island. Like, I can think of that kind of one immediately as soon as I think controversy. But whether this will be remembered or not, obviously time will tell. But I think if it I don't think this championship will come down to this kind of like a race, like this deciding the championship kind of thing. So I don't think it'll be that controversial. But if you ask the nerds like us, we'll probably still remember it in a few years' times. That's for sure.
Yeah, you're right in that. Like, there's certainly been moments throughout a championship that have defined the season. I think certainly the Lowndes Rick Kelly one is probably one of the most famous in many's eyes, because it happened in the final race of the year. But then you've got like the Murphy Ambrose incident at Bathurst. Both still had a shot at winning the race, but also for Ambrose that year, it ruined any chance really of winning that year's championship, because I think he was still the championship leader at that stage. I can't quite remember back that far, but he ended up finishing third behind Engel and Lowndes that year.
Well, that was the same year that it was 2006 that Scaife was out by the first lap, so all good.
Yeah, he was halfway up Mountain Straight, he was gone. But again, there's another controversial moment too, where, or just one of those Bathurst moments where the clutch was just disintegrating with every metre that he was trying to go up the road, and just had absolutely no drive. And then poor Jack Perkins, I think it was, didn't see him and has moved out from behind another car, and bang, there it goes. The race was over a matter of 30 seconds after it began, and only got to complete about 500 metres of racetrack. So it's just those sorts of moments that can be massive over the course of the season. But I think this is the first one where we've seen this much play out over a course of a season. We've never seen this many parity changes. We've never seen this much controversy over a car, over the Mustang, even though it's always been legal. It's been, according to supercars, the car has fallen. They're just trying to balance it back up. I guess in another way of looking at it, like I'd said, I never had any issue with Holden trying to catch up. It's nice having the advantage, but if you've got too much of an advantage, it's just not as fun anymore. You know you're going to go into every race and probably win it. I guess it's just to compare it, like if you're Usain Bolt, you're the fastest sprinter in the world, and you want to win a gold medal running against 7 of the other fastest sprinters in the world, like that's when it's even. But if you got put up against 7 other sprinters, but all of them were missing a leg, you're going to win the race all the same, but it's not going to be the same. It's not the same prestige of winning it against the best of the best. So even me as a Ford fan, yes, it's nice having an advantage. Yes, I'd still like to have the fastest car, but you don't want the other guys to be so far behind, because that's nowhere near as enjoyable to watch. It is like watching Mercedes in F1 at the moment. Yes, the other teams have sort of closed the gap a fair bit now, but ultimately it's still that one team that comes out on top more often than not, and it just, after a few years of that, ruins the sport. So that's why I don't go goo over F1 to the same amount that I used to anymore. So still certainly watch all the races, but I would watch everything to do with F1 as well as supercars. Now I just tune in for the race, and that's about it, and that's just to see how it plays out. So you're happy to have an advantage, but you don't want too much of an advantage, otherwise you start seeing stuff like this happen, which causes controversy. No one likes it. Then if you do see the other guys leap in front, then it blows up the other way, that they now have the advantage, and you don't want that. It's frustrating. So
yeah,
I would have no doubt that come the end of the season, supercars will act, and they will. The big talk is that they are going to pull back how much aero they have. If they knock back 30 or 40% off the cars, I reckon that'll certainly make it a lot easier to pass going down the straights, and just have the cars moving around more in the corners, and so the drivers are going to have to do more work, and then tyres will be an issue because you've got to wear out tyres faster. So it just improves the racing altogether.
That's for sure. Obviously, next one is the big one, the Bathurst 1000. It's a bit strange this year. It's before the 500 and the 600, so it'd be a bit weird. But it's still second weekend in October. But the start time has been pushed by 15 minutes, so not a huge difference for what is like a 6-hour race. There is no time certain for it, so not really anything to worry about then. We'll just keep driving around till we finish.
We'll turn the lights on and we'll keep going if we have to.
That's it. I think this is obviously going to do a bigger preview of the 1000 once we get more lead up, probably just the week before. We'll do a couple other littles podcasts in between. We'll talk about some older races and who we think might be up there. Not quite a preview, but we'll do some older races like we're talking about 2005, 2006. We'll choose those over the week. But I think it's going to be an interesting one, considering we now have the Red Bull Holden Racing team up almost at the same level as DJR Team Penske.
Yeah, if you went back a couple of races, when we were going into Bathurst, it was just almost an argument of which Mustang's going to win. Now that argument's not there anymore. Now Triple Eight really are a threat, especially like we've mentioned, they've got a really formidable driver lineup. So I think we'll endeavour to go through the whole grid list and see who's driving with who, because I haven't even seen exactly the entire list of who's driving, like what drivers are paired with who and all that sort of stuff. You certainly know a lot of the main ones, but there's a few further down the list that I haven't seen yet. But I think I think, and like you can never discount Erebus either. They've been really good the last couple of years. There were probably deserved winners last year if it wasn't for Reynolds having cramp with literally only a few laps to go. But one thing's for certain, I think there's going to be 4 or 5 teams, that are going to be really gunning for it, and we'll have all very similar pace to what you want to see. No doubt, I think the lap record's going to go. How much the Commodore will go ahead of the current lap record by, I'm not too sure. You'd think that the Mustang will set records for a lot of the weekend as well. I think a lot of people, what is it at the moment, 203 or something like that. So I reckon there's every chance that we could even see a very high 2. You just never know if you can just get that right temperature at the right time. Just the right amount of temperature on the track, and the driver nails it completely, then I reckon there's every chance of a 2. But if not, I think most of the field will be down into the low 4s, into the 3s at the very least, I think.
So that just about wraps us up for this controversial weekend. Thank you very much for joining me, Shane.
No worries, mate. We'll do this again very soon.
For sure. Thank you all very much for listening. We'll join you again next week for some special Bathurst podcast. And we'll see you later.